Hello, my name is Bob Boross, and this is my YouTube Jazz Dance channel. This is called My Jazz and Tap Dance Life. And here I have all things relating to different aspects of jazz dance technique, history, advocacy, just about anything we can think of. So right now I'm doing a live interview series, and today we will be talking about designing a musical theater dance curriculum. And this is particularly for universities as to how has this happened in the past, how have things been set up, how have we trained our dancers, and what are the new things coming into musical theater where we have to come up with new ideas on how to train our dancers. So I'm going to have two people coming in as experts in this field who are currently working. First, I am going to talk a little bit about, and I need to do a little click here to make this happen. Mary Robear. Mary Robear is a adjunct assistant professor of dance with Shenandoah University, with the conservatory there. And she has a very strong background. I'm just going to read a couple of things from here. After her BA from West Virginia University, Mary is a dancer, teacher, choreographer, graduate of the famed LaGuardia High School of Performing Arts in New York City. In Broadway, she's done Little Me, On Your Toes, Wind in the Willows, Singing in the Rain. And she's also done national tours of A Chorus Line, On Your Toes, and Nonsense. And she's also choreographed a whole slew of musicals, Most Happy Fellow, Funny Thing Happened, Chorus Line, She Loves Me, On the Town, Good News, etc. So she has a tremendous amount of experience in musical theater, and particularly, which I hope she's going to bring in today, she's very strong in ballet, and she's going to talk a little bit about that aspect. And then I'm also going to bring in as my next guest will be Lauren Gall, and she is an assistant professor with Pace University in the commercial dance program. Lauren has performed with the Radio City Rockettes for 10 years in the Christmas Spectacular, Monday Night Football, Columbus Day Parade. She's performed in Dance Break, the Astaire Awards, the Elan Awards, many industrials, and she is a long time, we were just talking about this a little bit earlier, long-time professor at Pace University, and has really seen the commercial dance program grow, and I'm sure she's going to be a big part of that. So I'm hoping she can bring that area of expertise to our discussion. There are people who are watching, and I'm sure it's going to grow. And what I would like to say to you, if you're watching, please check in, all right? You can make comments on your sidebar, say where you're from, say hello. And if you have questions for the panel, put those in there. If it's really pertinent, we'll get those right in. If not, we can always save them to the end and do question Q&A towards the end. So please make this as interactive as possible, okay? So that's it. So let's get to it. So I am going to bring into our room now, Lauren Gall. Hello, Lauren.
Hi, thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you for being here. And we're going to also add, here's Mary Robear. Hi, Mary.
Hi. Hi, Bob. Hi, Lauren. Hi, everyone.
How are you all doing today? You were able to get together and get through our pandemic and get your tech going, and we got our audio going. So everything is kind of good today, yes?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So our
the
tech
Zoom
is working.
thumbs up.
Yeah. Well, you know, sometimes between Wi-Fi and this and that, we always have problems. But it looks like we can just jump into this conversation. So musical theater dance programs, I think, have gone through a lot of changes over the years, and there's a lot of big growth in this. Right now, many universities are adding these programs because there's a lot of interest in it. So there's a talk about, well, how should we train people? So maybe I could talk a little bit about maybe like what it was like a little bit in the past, and then we'll talk about where it's going in the future and new things in there. So Mary, I'll start with you. If you were to talk about a well-rounded university musical theater dance program, what are some of the categories where dancers and people need to be studying in terms of being well-rounded? How should that be structured?
Let me just preface this by saying that I'm a teacher, and I teach at a lot of different studios. So that's the perspective that I bring.
Okay.
But my viewpoint on this is very long, and it goes back to the High School of Performing Arts, LaGuardia High School of Performing Arts, which is still kind of my model in my mind for what works. It's what worked for me. And we had ballet or modern. But I was a ballet major. And then we had classical modern at the time, Graham technique. And those were our foundational techniques. but then we also were introduced to Korean dance, African dance, Asian, Balinese things, all manner of dance. And we had to adapt, and we had to learn weight changes and scale and specificity. And those are the exact things that have helped me the most, both as a performer and as a teacher. So, I'll talk more about ballet. I love what ballet can do on every level, and not just for the perfect ballet body. But I consider those, we still at Shenandoah, which I was asked to mention, has been appearing on lists of top 10 musical theater programs in the country lately.
Okay.
But we still do, basically, it's ballet, jazz, tap, and I think there was musical theater styles, which Bob and I taught together there. And those are the basics. And then out of that, especially in the musical theater styles course, we ended up introducing tastes of many different genres. And in the course of performing, they get a lot of performing opportunities. The students get to experience many different genres and styles, like even within, obviously, tap. There are many different tap styles. So that training to versatility, I think, is probably what I would say helped me the most, and is my suggestion.
Okay. All right, you're bringing in not only more traditional, but you're talking about ballet, jazz, tap, modern. Those are basics you're going to be able to come from in terms of developing your technique level. All right, so that's something for the dance aspect. But are there other things in there, Lauren, maybe about like history or different things? Like what else does that musical theater dancer need to know in addition to starting their regular training in the different disciplines?
Right. Well, it's so interesting because at Pace, we have a musical theater program, which we run the dance program for, and the dance program, which does often gear musical theater, but we have kids in concert as well. So it's hard because if like I'm talking to a pure musical theater student, like what I consider our MTs, that's what we call them, our MTs, that's like a different conversation than a musical theater dancer. You know what I mean? So I just want to kind of put that out there. I think for a musical theater dancer, they have to have voice and acting. There's no way that you're going to get on Broadway nowadays, especially, or honestly, regional theater is sometimes harder to book than even a Broadway show, because now with the way that they're cutting down the budgets, they want someone who can dance, sing, and act at the highest caliber of all of those things. And, that's a harder skill set to find, really. Whereas, you can get in an ensemble of a Broadway show and, sometimes you're just like, not even mic'd. It just depends, So I think you have to talk about voice and acting, which sometimes for a dancer from like a classical background or even a modern or hip hop or any other sort of background, that can be a scary discussion for them. They have to have that included, and they have to have some sort of history class, I think, too, where they have context. If you're going to walk into a regional theater and be doing a production of Chorus Line, you can't go in and like have no idea who was the first choreographer of that piece. These are just things you need to know to be a part of the community, like a contributing part of the community. So, that's why, especially for me, I'm always a big advocate of, if you want to dance, if you want to be in musical theater, concert dance, wherever you want to go in this industry, go get your degree in that thing. And I know sometimes that feels scary for people, but I think nowadays it's really the prerequisite, because that's where you're going to get the voice and the acting classes, hopefully at a good, a good program that includes those. That's where you're going to get dance history. I find that a lot of our students, Mary, maybe you agree with this, and Bob too, since you all have been in academia for a long time. I find a lot of the students come to Pace and they've never even heard of, they usually have heard of Alvin Ailey, and they've usually heard of a few names, but sometimes they don't know who Balanchine is. They don't know who Diaghilev is. They don't know who Jack Cole is. They had never even heard of Jack Cole. And he gets really lost in history a lot. So that's where you're going to get that more in-depth information that I think the dancers are kind of looking for to be competitive in today's market.
Right. Okay. So Go right ahead,
I'd
Mary.
like to add on to that, yes, unless you have the opportunity to grow up in an urban area with a ton of live theater, most of my students, I ask them who their role models are, and they've never even seen live productions. They just probably were, the star of Les Mis in their high school production. They loved it, and went. They have to. I will say too, we don't have a musical theater dance program. We have an MT program, and so that dance is just one of the components of that. And the other plug for higher education for the performing arts is it takes time. It just takes time. And, the conservatory approach of we teach dance separately, voice is separate, acting is separate, but the goal is to integrate all of those skills. And so along the way, they get increasing opportunities to do that, acting through song, MT styles, and then the productions that they do. But I agree with you, Lauren. They, college is the place. And that college age is the perfect age to explore all these different things. And they don't have to be an expert in every single one of them, but they have to have, gain some kind of empirical knowledge to be part of the community. Just what you said. Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
Okay. So now what you're just talking about, we just named so many aspects, so many things that needed to be studied. And this is, like we said, we've all been in academia, so we know the problems of making this happen. You only have a certain amount of courses, a certain amount of credits, a certain amount of time to make all of this happen. So how should a program be structured so that hopefully somebody going through that program can hit all of those areas or as many as possible and not be deficient in some way? Is it possible?
Well, if I could just chime in about that.
Sure.
I think it is, because this is what we did at Pace. I've been there since 2007. I started as an adjunct, then I was a lecturer. Now I'm an assistant professor, and actually now also co-director of the program with the director, Rhonda Miller, who I know a lot of people know. Rhonda's fabulous. And Rhonda and I, we wrote the program together. So I had the experience of how do you build a program? And similar to what Mary was saying with LaGuardia, I took a lot of things from my past. We took a lot of things from Rhonda's past that were we were trying to answer problems that we saw in previous training. And I think it's possible to do that type of curriculum shift. I think it has to be in a 4-year BFA. I really don't know that it's possible not within a 4-year BFA. And we slammed everything into this BFA that we could. It's basically a conservatory style BFA within a liberal arts college. So we have as much credits in dance as the conservatories, but with all the liberal arts classes. So it's a heavy load. But, we had to you had to make tough decisions. And we still are shifting the curriculum as we're into it a little bit here and there. Because one of the big things we've added is our juniors do a whole semester in Los Angeles now with all dance on camera with Mandy Moore and all these LA people. And it's really a cool, very new, different experience. But that's where we see things going in, TV and film a lot. So, we're shifting, but we had to make a lot of tough decisions. Our program, for instance, is based in ballet and jazz specifically, whereas other programs, and I'm not saying this bad one way or the other. A lot of programs, it's ballet and modern, and then the jazz is sort of secondary. But we wanted to kind of shift that focus. So you have as much ballet as you do jazz, basically, in the program. And then you have modern, we have Graham, we have Horton, but you have 1 or 2 semesters of those other disciplines. Contemporary, we also include hip hop, we include tap. These are all required courses. We include voice. You have 3 semesters of voice in our program, acting. But if you're going to do it in a BFA, you have to start making hard choices. No one's going to have 4 years of all modern, all jazz, all ballet, all voice, all acting, just because you couldn't do it in 4 years. But I do think there's a way to do it. I mean, and I feel like that's what we did sort of at Pace. I came from a background, my undergrad was at OCU, who's one of our competitors now. And then I did my master's at Purchase. So I saw both sides of the conservatory and the more musical theater and kind of blended those into some of what I brought to as my ideas to what Rhonda created. And then she had, of course, a lot of her own thoughts about it. But I don't know. I think it has to, I don't know if you could do it in anything but a 4-year BFA.
Well, by saying a BFA, that's a little bit more concentrated in the field that people don't know, as opposed to getting a BA degree. So you can devote more courses to this area and a little bit less in terms of maybe outside requirements and liberal
right.
art.
We had a BA years ago when we first started it, but we folded it because of sort of what I'm saying. We couldn't quite fit in the amount that the kids wanted. And so we folded it kind of into the BFA.
Okay.
Lauren, I have a question actually for Lauren, because I have the honor and privilege of watching her teach at Pace many years ago. And at the time, the commercial dance intensive was pretty brand new, but it stuck in my mind. It said that every 6 weeks you rotate teachers, I guess subjects also. So you might have 6 weeks of hip hop followed by 6 weeks of something else. I thought that was a very interesting concept.
Yeah, it's very different than, like, for instance, I just compare things to some of my background. Like at Purchase, Monday I had this ballet teacher and Tuesday I had this ballet teacher. Do you know what I mean? For the whole semester.
Right.
We don't do it like that because of what you were talking about earlier too, Mary, with the versatility. The number one thing that we think makes students employable in concert, commercial, theater, whether they're doing TV and video, any of that stuff, it's versatility and adaptability, and they have to do it fast. And so that's why we did this. We have a very good rotation schedule. So in whatever discipline you're in, you basically would rotate between all of that faculty within the semester. So I share a class with Jackie Ford. I don't know if you guys know who she is. And so Jackie and I teach our jazz class. So all the students come through us for 3 weeks, and then they all go to Rhonda for 3 weeks. And then they go to like Dee Caspery or Ginger Cox or Jess Hendricks or Shelly Hutchinson or Jeremy Duvall, like whatever faculty are assigned that semester. So they're getting roughly somewhere between 6 to 8 different faculty members throughout the whole semester. And we do the same thing with ballet. We do it with modern. We do it with hip hop. So they're getting a lot of voices in the room. It can sometimes get a little confusing because somebody wants it this way and someone wants it that way. We know how that goes.
But that's the reality.
Yeah,
that's 100% the reality of your life as a professional dancer.
Yeah, but you're talking about versatility, and that versatility needs to be there. But I don't know if you can just jump into versatility. There needs to be a solid base underneath first that then allows you to be able to do that. So Mary, maybe you could address that. I mean, if somebody's coming in, say within their first 2 years of coming in, what should that type of student be addressing during that time period?
Well, I love to teach them ballet if they're beginners or relative beginners. And one of the things I love about ballet is that even in the course of learning the difference between en face, croisé, when you're in croisé, I always tell them, you're not croisé, you're croisé so that every single person who bought a ticket can see this and see your lips move when you're singing and hear what you're saying. And to teach that physical orientation to the traditional proscenium theater stage, I think is really a good thing for them. And then they can throw it out. I also always say you have to know the rules before you can break the rules. And there are and I'm a rule breaker, so I'm all for
write that one down. Write
that one down. Needle point it. But so I think it's great for that. I think as long as it's not taught with our old school, some of the old school techniques we probably all learned with openness, meeting the students where they are and teaching, everything, dynamics, musicality, body awareness, just a sense of their shape and awareness that it's not just what's coming from how they feel, which is very important in like Meisner acting technique, everything, but also what is your audience looking at? What's the line you're making, being conscious of that. Now that's different. Of course, that's a different conversation than what you would have with someone who's come out of a dozen years in dance competitions or a ballet academy for 15 years. You know, those are different things, but there's also great health in having some of those dancers be in the room with the other people. We often have class demonstrators and their eyes are very often opened to aspects of it that they haven't thought of before. And after all, the point of education, I think, is to broaden and expand perspectives so that it can serve them whatever they end up doing. So I love to teach ballet. I love it.
Okay. Now it's also possible too, because all programs are different. Some programs may be like oriented a little bit more towards very strong dancing, and those kids coming in have a good basis when they come in. I've been in a range of things. Right now, I teach it at Marymount Manhattan College as an adjunct in their program. And I have dancers coming in who are mainly actor-singer types. And I've had in my first freshman class this year, half the class say, I've never had a dance class. So maybe to say, we are going to do these very strong techniques, maybe they can get there, but maybe not, so maybe there's a different way of addressing that person, because they're going to be more of an actor singer who moves rather than the dancer who's doing Bob Fosse and Jerome Robbins and Susan Stroman and things like that. So like, what should they do? Is there a particular movement for an actor class or a different way of moving that won't be so strictly technique oriented and maybe a little bit more just body awareness type of oriented? Do you have anything like that, Lauren, within your program?
Well, it's interesting because I want to sort of like say two things, so I don't want to forget my thoughts. But
okay.
At Pace, we have the musical theater program, which our musical theater program is what I think top 5 in the country, top 3. It's very high caliber. And Amy Rogers, who runs that, we run all the dance classes for her musical theater students. So Rhonda and I oversee that. A lot of our faculty from the commercial dance program actually teaches in that program, which is not always common. OCU wasn't like that. I don't know how many, but other schools work like that. Usually they have a completely separate faculty for the musical theater. It's not from the dance program. And then we have our dance program. So one thing I want to say about the dance program, the commercial dance program at Pace, is that we do always look for technical training, a high level of training that the students are coming in for, but that's not always the recipe that we take either. And our kids are very, very talented and skilled, but we always say we take risks. We might see someone who comes into the room that maybe they're incredible. We do a hip hop audition, we do a tap audition for our incoming students. That's not very common at BFA programs. And, we might have seen someone who's one of the best tappers I've ever seen. And they're good and they have strong background in some ballet and jazz, but we're going to go with that student because they have something to offer in a different area. That's so, and we've done that in the past. We've taken kids that maybe a ballet school wouldn't have looked at, but for us, they're a perfect fit for Pace because we can train them. And especially we found it with the men that it works. We can train the men, and we've had women too, female dancers as well. And we've done that. And they come in and they do exceptionally well. They can pick up very quickly in the other styles that I think they might get written off at other programs. But because they have these skill sets and other things, it's really important to us because we think it's about the individual and where they're going to go. We can't expect where their trajectory is going to go. So yeah, we do need a high level of training, but at the same time, it also kind of depends on the person. And I think this in now flipping to a musical theater program and between a dance program, that's one of the things we tried to address with our musical theater dance program. Bob, what you were kind of bringing up is a lot of times this is their first ballet class, their first jazz class. So what we did was the freshman MTs, I'm going to probably screw this up because I don't have the layout in front of me. The freshman MTs start in ballet their first semester, just to kind of get them introduced. We feel like they need that base of, understanding just like tendus and plies and simplistic things so that we can get like a foundation. And then the next semester, they don't go into the next semester of ballet. They actually go into jazz because we want to flip them to a different discipline. And then they stay with jazz, and then they come back to ballet, and then they go to theater dance, and then they go to tap. So we did this progression in a way that we were trying to get them different disciplines each year, because we had to acknowledge that within their first year at Pace, in that spring semester, all those musical theater majors are going to go out and start auditioning for summer work, summer stock. And we can't send them in with only ballet training if they've never had anything else. So we had to find other ways to get different styles to them earlier on. And I think that's an interesting concept, and something that other schools could look at doing for the musical theater majors, is to not just stick them in ballet the whole time. It's really hard for them. I'm not saying physically. I think it's actually hard for them mentally. And I mean, I love ballet, don't get me wrong, but I think sometimes it might be more advantageous to put them in like a theater dance or a jazz where they can be a little more expressive, because that's a little more what is in their comfort zone.
Right.
And I think it makes them feel more comfortable in the dance room.
Oh,
okay.
Me. So I actually taught a class last night. I have a couple of my college students who have signed up for it's another program through the university. It's a community program. And so I asked them last night what helps them most. And they're beginning ballet students essentially. But one of the things I do as a teacher, I can't speak for the entire university, but as a teacher, because of my personal background, I'm always imploring them to tell the story through the movement, even in a tendu combination. Right. Don't wait, don't wait. And I'm also always relating my lessons about placement to how they'll need to breathe while they're singing and dancing at the same time. So that kind of integration is a way to address it. And that works at every single level. I mean, if you have a very high level dancer who only knows how to breathe up here and is trying to learn how to sing and dance at the same time, it's a conversation that they can hear and something they can be working on physically.
Right.
So I was excited. I wanted to share about that. And I don't want to also misrepresent in any way. The MTs do not only get ballet like their first year. They have, they're leveled, they're placed according to their level. And depending on that, there are different tracks for them to follow. And one of the things that Shiloh Martinez and Kevin Covert have been working very studiously to redesign little parts of the curriculum for the MT majors who take dance under the dance division. And now they've lengthened the classes. Bob, you'll be interested. So we no longer have, so we have an hour and a half class, which has been a long time coming.
That's good.
Anyway,
that makes a big difference.
Okay. All right. I'm going to move this in a little bit more direction, because we've been talking about technique. And so just suppose, okay, they've done 2 years, they're getting some technique, they're feeling much more solid in what they're going to do. But I mean, they're there to perform, they're there to go to that next level. So in terms of maybe a little bit later in their progression, what are the choices for them in a dance format to work on dance performance? I mean, of course, there's always a musical that they can be cast in, but quite often, and this is a whole other discussion, is you can go through 4 years of a program and unfortunately maybe not be cast in a musical or not have that type of experience. So what are the options available then to work more towards the performance aspect of their training and not particularly about the technique aspect of their training?
Well, I do think, I don't quote me but I'm pretty sure everyone that comes in as an MT major is cast in a musical. There are 3 musicals a year, 2 the big stage and 1 in the black box. And there are some very active student groups. And one of the overall initiatives that has been growing is to really listen to a student-led kind of experience. We have a week that we there aren't classes, and it's devoted to their mentors if they seek them, to collaborations, cross majors, and they're creating work and getting opportunities to perform that way. And back to like one of the very first questions, obviously, I think any MT program has to talk about being on camera, regardless of how commercial it is. I think that's something that they're all learning about, the business, and they don't get that till later. I think juniors or seniors at SU, but those are the things they all want to know. They all want to rush out. I don't know, Lauren, how it is for you, but almost all of my students as freshmen come in, they're like so focused on what's going to happen in the audition. Like the audition, you're going to audition thousands of times. You want to be able to sustain yourself as a human being and an artist and a performer for your whole life. So just relax. But they're very, very interested in what happens in that audition, which is, of course, you spoke to that, why you offer different genres quickly in their program. I'm rambling. Sorry, I got off.
Lauren, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so performance is a big part of our program, and I think for any MT or jazz-based dance program, it has to be. I remember both at my undergrad and even my grad work at Purchase, because we worked a lot with the BFAs at Purchase when we were grad students, so I knew the BFAs pretty well that I was there with, and so I was sometimes like, oh, sorry, I have one of my notifications on. Sorry. I saw a lot of them never get cast in 4 years in any dance piece. And that was really hard to sit and watch, both in my undergrad, see friends that went through that, and then in my grad, to see some of the BFAs go through that. And one of the biggest things at Pace is that we cast every dancer. You might not be in every single concert, but everyone performs in their time at Pace. And really, honestly, I would say most everybody, the majority, perform at least 3 or 4 semesters. Really more than that, but that's at least the minimum. And it's a big commitment that we've made, because we do around 20 new dance pieces a year alone, just between faculty and guest artists. We usually have 4 to 5 guests each year. And for each of those things that they're doing, they're also auditioning for all of those people each year. So they're getting 20 some odd different auditions. So all of that kind of experience, just for the main stage shows that we do, is really, really helpful. And they audition and start that very first audition in freshman year. So it's just a huge, like, building and scaffolding of experience. Like you see how the seniors walk in there and now they know what they're doing when they walk into that first audition. And I remember when some of them were freshmen and they were like this in the back of the room, terrified. And, it's just, they have to have that physical experience of the thing. That's how we are kinesthetic. We learn through doing. Also, at Pace in particular, we have many other productions throughout the year. And like Mary was saying, the student-led productions are really important, I think. And I think for me as well, as a faculty member, watching them, it's really important, because sometimes it does happen that I start to think of somebody in this way and I might not see them in another light, and a student casts them in another piece. And oh my goodness, like that, it's eye-opening. And every year I'm really blown away by what the students bring. And in our freshman fall, all of the freshmen are not allowed to actually be in our main stage production. They can be in the spring, which a lot of them get cast in the spring one. But there's a show that we do called Emergence. That's the student choreography show for the advanced level choreography class. And they use all the freshmen, all the sophomores. And it's really a great experience for the kids, because they get to kind of intermingle. They learn from each other. The faculty, we all come and watch it, and we learn from them too, seeing what they're producing. And I think it's a really important part of the experience. I think those student-led things can give a lot of performance opportunities, and they need them. I think it's hard to go through 4 years of BFA and never perform and think you're going to go out and audition for Broadway and get a show. Maybe it happens, of course, but like, it's hard, they have to practice it in their school.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I really only brought that up because, you know, at this one university or college I'm at right now, in our Zoom meeting of this week, that was a big contention of students to say, I'm never cast, I'm never cast, I'm never cast. And I'm, you know, so for somebody who's looking at programs to try to ask that question, by the time I get to that point, what's there for me? Is it something that's going to be so competitive that I might be boxed out? So it's something for people to consider. Yeah. Christine, I see your question, and hi, Chris, and we're going to get to it in a minute, but we're going to do a couple more things, and then we'll get to that. Now, Mary, you started talking about auditions, the audition. Well, I mean, for most of these programs, young students have to audition to get into these programs. So in terms of what expectations are, because I know people think they have to be fabulous and wonderful, and if they are, that's great, but really, I don't think people who are auditioning, professors are looking for somebody who's perfect when they're a high school senior. So what qualities do you want to see in somebody that says, yeah, I'm going to take them, no matter what their technique level is, no matter what their ability is, I just see something in there. What might that be?
Well, you want the same thing that any, you know, producer, director, choreographer wants. You want them trainable. You want them open. You want them positive. And because, you know, talent, they have it. They're showing up. By the time I see them, they're usually coming in to take a sample class. They've already been through the pre-screens, had, you know, been weeded out. And you know, you don't want to feel like you're getting resistance from them. You want to be able to have this dialogue, this beautiful dialogue that happens, that accelerates learning between the instructor and the student. And so that's what I respond to. Full
wow,
story.
That's a great term, to be trainable. So there's just an openness, you know, there's something that says I'm able to take in information.
Yes.
And utilize that information and develop it and go the next step. And hopefully, I mean, you're getting the information from the teacher, but also on your own. All right. It's not something that everybody has to give it to you constantly. It's that you can grab it up by yourself and take that next step too, to make that happen. Always tell them that they themselves are their best teacher. And when you self-practice, and all that self-practice you do in the days off from class, that's where you make your real progress. Okay. Lauren, how about you? Do you have any ideas on that?
Yeah. Kind of like what I was saying before, we get asked this a lot at Pace, like, what do you guys look for? Like, what's the formula to get in? Because, you know, it's a competitive program now. And it's really hard to say because there isn't a formula. And you have me in the room usually. It's usually Rhonda Miller. Usually our other full-time faculty member is Scott Jovovich. Sometimes we have some of our other adjuncts in there, Holly Evans or Ginger Cox, Michael Cusimano maybe. You have a lot of personalities and a lot of differing opinions, even though we all agree on a lot of things. And sometimes, honestly, what we're looking for is not a describable thing. I mean, yeah, we want you to be talented, but we're kind of assuming that you already are because you're applying to a BFA dance program. Like I said, our audition is really different than most other schools because it's a ballet class. We watch you in ballet class, we watch you in jazz class, we watch you in a hip hop class, and we watch you in a tap class. So there's a lot of areas for people to excel. And then there's other areas where they might not excel. And one of the first things that we always tell them is, we are not looking at one of these things as, oh, you don't do ballet, you don't get into the program. Or, oh, you don't tap, you've never done a shuffle, you don't get into the program. That's not what the audition is. It's looking at who you are and what you're bringing to the table. And then we kind of view our program as not like a break you down to build you back up program, but this is where we're all starting at with our skill set. And we're going to move forward together in your training. And it might be very different for each person. You know, so I think we look for, you know, talent, which doesn't necessarily indicate technical ability. It's nice if they have a technical base, you know, of course that's important to some degree, but we're looking for talent, like this raw energy, something that's indescribable. We're looking for uniqueness, individuality. I think those things are more sellable than just somebody who can hold their leg in their air. By their head. That to me is, yes, beautiful, but it's not you have to have a magnetism to be a performer. And we've definitely seen people come into the room that maybe weren't at the technical skill level of some of our other current BFAs, but they had an undeniable energy that we could not stop watching them, the three of us. We've even had people who came into the interview. They did good in the audition and we liked them, but we've decided to take them into the program based on their interview because of who they were as a person. And I think all of those things, they don't get talked about sometimes in dance training, but they're really important. Because like Mary was saying earlier, any director wants to work with someone who's positive, who's like a good person. We all know we've been in the rehearsal room with someone who maybe created a toxic or not enjoyable atmosphere.
Yeah, a little too much drama.
Yeah, it's tough. And so that's actually really important to us, you know? So it's not a clear answer really, but I think the fact that we look at so many genres is really an important factor. You know.
Okay. All right. Let's get to Christine's question, and then I'm going to ask you the one big question afterwards. So let me pop this up here. Okay. She says, I have a daughter that has been dancing for many years now, but is lacking in education for voice and musical theater. Will most of these programs balance her out, or will she be behind?
Depends on the program. I mean,
yeah. If you're applying to Shenandoah University to the musical theater program, I would have to say you probably think of yourself as a singer actor first who dances. It doesn't mean we have dancers that are the same level as the dance majors, which I haven't talked about because we service both majors. I will say I would have given a different answer to this question 10 years ago, 100%. Now there are so many programs that train young people how to audition for college musical theater programs.
Yes.
So I'm thinking, how do I get in on that? But no, that's another story. There are all these programs. So if you have an opportunity to explore one of those, I would advise you to do that. Just so if for no other reason, you'll know what you're coming into the room against competitively. And there are some things that are, whereas before we would have overlooked if you showed up and sang happy birthday, you can't do that anymore because there are 3,000 other people who can sing all the different genres. So it's not necessarily that she's behind if she loves to sing and she's a natural actress, but you definitely want to invest in getting some skills, some chops up if you're auditioning for a musical theater program. That's what I would say. I
think Mary, it depends though, because it sounds like to me from Christine's question that maybe she's auditioning at dance programs. Because if she's auditioning at dance,
I might have misunderstood.
I don't know. Maybe she can write it in the chat because Mary's right in regards to the musical theater programs. It's a totally different ball game. But if she's auditioning at dance programs, then
she doesn't need to sing an act.
We actually take singing videos in their pre-screens if they want. But I think we're one of the only schools. We're basically the only school that does it. I'm 100% sure of that. Most BFA dance programs, there's very few that include voice. OCU, I believe, is the only other one that I know of. I could be wrong in that. There might be others, but Bob, maybe you know if there are others, but she wouldn't be behind necessarily in a dance program.
No, not at all.
No, I mean, what I was going to pull out was what's mentioned before is that programs are all different. And there are some programs that might focus a little bit more towards the actor singer. And then there's more that might say, no, we have very strong dancing here. We're looking for strong dancers. So if that's where she is right now, if her big strength is dance, but she has the interest in acting and voice, maybe there's a certain program that would suit her a little bit more and just get her foot into the door. So to go to somewhere where there's going to be very high powered singers, and actors, that might not be the one to go to. And so just to look for the best in to make that happen. Okay. All right. Here's a big question. We talked about, training these dancers and kind of the older model was the ballet, jazz, tap, and maybe a little bit of modern sort of thing. Then you, on your own, you would get some styles here and there. And there is such a new influx of shows on Broadway that there is a volume of new work that isn't of the requirements of the old work, where you need to know hip hop, you need to know salsa dancing, you need to know some of these other different styles. Is it possible that in the future, and a lot of those are for young people, right? You know, I mean, we're not writing particularly shows for 50-year-old people. It's a hip hop show. So is it something where there might be a training track that says, you know, I don't do ballet, you know, I don't do strict technique jazz, but I do hip hop and I do salsa dancing and I do all these other, you know, different body forms, and that's who I am. And that is a viable way of training somebody. So I don't have to worry about, you know, I'm not going to audition for a strict ballet show or something where that's going to be my brand, the person who I am, where I fit in is over here. So is that something that's out there? Will schools respond to that and give different tracks?
Well, I hope they do.
Yeah. I think I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I know it's a conversation that has been had at SU in the dance division. Why do we have this, you know, westernized view of teaching dance? And it's exciting conversation. So to make changes to curriculum takes a while. I have to say, it's not something you have an idea and you run with it, like if it's your own business. But I think it is very much an exciting conversation that's being had. Beyond that, I know, Bob, when you and I shared the musical theater styles courses at SU, it was, I teach a different combination every 2 weeks. It's a class that meets twice a week. And I taught, you know, the older shows. And then you came in when they got, you know, in second semester, I guess it was. And then you brought in more contemporary work. And so they were getting something new, and really within the musical theater styles course. And within that, if there was something that I was not an expert in, like Afro-Caribbean dance, I would bring in a guest to teach that. But I do think it proportionately, it could take a bigger place in schools. It's not going to probably happen tomorrow, but I think that's a very interesting idea too, of having perhaps designing. I mean, wouldn't it be great if they could design their own programs and being able to choose the track that they feel yes and no? Because it's also great to like give them the information about something that maybe they'll never perform in, but it gives them that knowledge and that strong education. It's a good question.
We have been constantly thinking about this. So, especially because our curriculum is so different than most dance schools. So, one of the ways that another part of it that is just logistical is we're in Manhattan, we're in New York City. And besides that, you know, the faculty, we have a lot of contacts that are in the industry still. So we get these chances to just bring things immediately in. I mean, a few years back, Andy Blankenbuehler called up Rhonda and was like, hey, I need to workshop this new Broadway show. Could you give me like 5 dancers in a room for a week? And so we picked a bunch of our seniors who we knew, you know, probably had a skill set he was kind of looking for, and put them in a room with Andy. They workshopped something, and, you know, he ended up using one of our seniors who graduated that year. She's been in like 3 of his different shows now. She was in Fosse Verdon. She's done everything because she made that connection. So that's one of the things we're kind of looking at. And that, you know, Andy's still in the theatrical genre of things, but we have a residency with, I don't know if you guys know this organization, Dance Lab New York. It's run by Josh Prince, who's a Broadway choreographer. People know him. And every spring, we pick one of the Dance Lab choreographers. Usually we've tried to pick someone of like a varying genre, so they're not so theatrical. So like this past spring, even though everything got shut down because of the pandemic, but anyways, we were really excited because we picked this brand new choreographer, Broadway performer. His name's Justin Prescott. He was actually a BFA at Purchase with me when I was there.
Mm-hmm.
He's been out dancing on Broadway for 10 years. And we picked Justin because of specifically, he did really different work. It was like street dance mixed with jazz and ballet and contemporary. And I can't explain the style, but it was what is happening now in dance. Mm-hmm. And because of this dance lab residency, because we're in Manhattan, we had Justin come in. He created this awesome piece. I hope at some point we're going to be able to show it. And just that alone was like such mm-hmm. a new concept. And we do that every year with Dance Lab. And it's a way to bring in kind of those different voices mm-hmm. than just the ballet, jazz, contemporary, modern. Mm-hmm. And it's really, really important. And I will say one of the other things that we do in every concert is we at least always have one tap, and we at least always have one hip hop commercial street style piece. Mm-hmm. And we commit to that because of, again, the training in our program being based around that. You know, Caleb Teicher came in last year, and actually he was going to do a tap, and then he changed it and he did a vernacular jazz piece. And that was like mm-hmm. a really great experience for our students to have that differing version of jazz dance. But we do a lot of it through the guest artists. And I think the reason we can do it, honestly, is because we're in Manhattan. So that situation does make it harder for other schools, possibly, unless they have maybe like a lot of endowment money where they can bring people in. We don't have to deal with housing because most everyone lives there. So mm-hmm. it's
transportation.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Meals.
Right. Yeah. And again, you have to have different genres in your concerts to embrace those different styles, because really a lot of schools, they want to do, and I'm not saying this in a detriment, but they are ballet jazz based schools. So they might do ballet and modern based schools. They might do one jazz piece 1 year or one theater piece 1 year, but we do almost 2 taps and 2 hip hops and 2 or 3 theater dance pieces in each semester mm-hmm. of our performing. And if you don't have different genres in your performances, you're not going to bring in different genres with your guests. Mm-hmm. And the only way to bring in what Bob is talking about with the new things that are happening, which is not these like codified styles, you have to open up what you're doing in your performances.
Okay. Well, all right. Yes or no, or maybe a maybe, but yes or no. So is it possible or probable that in the future, someone can say, I am a trained, employable, working musical theater dancer, and I have never studied ballet or jazz? Is that going to be out there?
Don't you think? Aren't there already?
Yeah, I think they're definitely.
I think that's like in terms of the work that's out there. I mean, of course, somebody can get into one show, but is to say, I've had a career. There is a field out there that asks for dance, for musical theater, that does not delve into that beginning root of the ballet mold, which is what we have seen in the past.
Well, how many revivals are you going to be performing potentially as a musical theater performer? So there's that. I mean, I don't,
I do think it's possible. I think it's possible because honestly, I look at our musical theater majors at Pace, who most of them have not come in with a lot of dance training. Now, some of them have too, but I've seen some of them go on to like dancing type of roles. Now, these people can sing. I mean, they are vocalists. So that helps them to get in the door, but they're not rooted in classicism. We even have a student at Pace that I'm thinking of in my mind. She's been very successful on Broadway, but she happens to be a great singer and she's a great dancer. Mm-hmm. But I think if you asked her, she would not at all say that she comes from a ballet background, more of a jazz background. She has a rawness about her and she is just magnetic. And she'll go far as a dancer because she can dance circles around anyone. I mean, she doesn't have perfect ballet technique, but there was a lot with her that, she could just do these different things because of her just raw magnetism that she held. So I think the world is changing. And I think programs need to acknowledge that maybe we shouldn't make everyone fit into this ballet mold. If they have differing type of backgrounds, they can be successful. I have definitely seen it with some of our graduates.
Mm-hmm. I don't think there's, I couldn't have been, I performed on Broadway and On Your Toes for over a year and a half to do tours of it. And I was the original Sister Mary Leo in Nonsense, and which is a role that's done on point. So I did a lot of my performing. I was doing ballet, but I couldn't have done those shows if all I knew was ballet.
Right.
Even back then. And I still maintained sort of what I originally said was that seeking versatility and openness. And then beyond that, what are the new choreographers doing? What shows are going to be written? We need new material. We need, we do. And so that's what's going to be informing that. And then the training kind of has to follow those trends and those curves. As much as I clearly love ballet, I would be the last person to say you have to have ballet. And we all know that ballet can actually hurt people's sense of self-worth, a lot of things if people feel they're forced into a mold.
Right.
So, it depends on the attitude and the philosophy of the school and the instructors. But that's a very long way of saying, yes, there's a future where you don't have to have ballet. But we didn't even talk about jazz and how crucial that is, in terms of the musicality and being able to connect and find the syncopation and all the things that, the dynamics and the sharpness and specificity that are an outgrowth of learning and those styles. I don't think it hurts to have some foundational classic training. I don't think it hurts anyone unless it's taught badly. But it's not a requirement. I don't think it's a requirement. What if you're mainly a singer? You probably won't ever be asked to do. You might be asked to waltz in a show,
Okay. All right. Well, those are good comments. We're right about at the end of our interview. So if there's anything that you can think of, like a last parting bit of information or on anything, whether it's on technique or on history or performance or auditioning or something, what is some little nugget of your wisdom that you can offer to the viewers and subscribers?
I just wanted to comment really quick. I see Tom Ralabate on here, who I've admired for many years, commenting, and I have to concur exactly. If other program heads are listening, I really want to encourage you decolonizing your programs. I agree 100%. I think we're on this precipice with everything that's happening in the world right now. And even at Pace, we're really looking at our curriculum of how we can do more of that, how we can bring more of a world view to our dance that's more inclusive. I think that is key. And I think this is the time to start doing those things. I know that Juilliard even actually ended up hiring our hip hop teacher. She teaches hip hop now at Juilliard. And I think that's a big step. I think more programs need to start to acknowledge that the only way that you're going to change things is by changing the curriculum, and it can't just be ballet and modern. You have to start to include these other genres that, like we're talking about, they have to be exposed to. So I don't know. That's my last thought. I just saw him wrote that, and it just wanted to acknowledge it because I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I agree. And that takes me right back to LaGuardia High School Performing Arts, where we had, it takes me right back there. We had all these people from all over the world come in and, share their expertise and their reverence for the cultures that they had studied. And the more we can get on a more unified conversation about that, respectful and inclusive, the better everything is going to be.
Very good.
And I still love ballet.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Mary, and thank you, Lauren, for giving your time. This has been wonderful information. I'm sure people are going to be very interested in watching this as it's archived in the future. Okay. And again, for other people who are watching in the future, this is not the only time we'll be doing this. I'll be doing the same conversation with other professors to bring in other viewpoints at the same time so that we get as much well-rounded look as where musical theater in training for dancers is going in the future. Okay. So thank you both.
Thank you.
I'm gonna take you out for a second and just say goodbye, and then I'll catch up with you afterwards. Okay. So don't go away. All right. Wow. What a great, great interview. So much great information that came out of that. And not just the standard information that we've seen in the past, but ideas about new things that are going to happen. So hopefully that's going to give a lot of you out there who see this thoughts about what can you do, well, you know, whether you have a local dance studio, whether you're teaching in a high school, wherever you may be, you're choreographing for community theater, what can you do to bring some of these new ideas into musical theater training for dancers and just be a part of where things are going, okay? So that's it. We're going to wrap it up. My name is Bob Boross. This is my Jazz and Tap Dance Life. If you've enjoyed this, please be a subscriber. I know many of you are, and it's growing and growing. From what I did my interview on Monday with Michael Williams at the University of Arizona to today, which is only 3-4 days later, there are already 25 new subscribers, just like that. So people are interested in this information. So please subscribe, click the notifications bell. And if you click like, that tells YouTube it's very good information and they're more likely to make it available to other people who have expressed interest in this topic. So that's it today. We're going to end this broadcast right there. Thank you. And we'll be back again soon with another interview.